Hello everybody, I'm Raul. I'm the founder and CEO of Tinybop. If you don't know us, we're a Brooklyn-based company, and there are 25 of us now. We just hired 2 new people today. Today's our first day, which I'm missing. We started, our first app came out on the App Store in 2013, August 2013. And we just launched our 12th app last week. From when we started to now, we've been an iOS-only company. I think that will continue for a while, but our footprint is expanding, and we're branching out into some other realms. We just, a few months ago, closed a round of funding that's going to help us grow to really expand into essentially just expand the brand footprint. So this talk is a little bit about what we think about when we make apps. It's not necessarily a linear talk, but I think mine never are. So it's called the Book of Miracles. So last summer, I took my family to Hawaii for the first time, and I'd never been to Hawaii. I didn't particularly want to go, but it was amazing. Like, Hawaii is like this amazing primordial place, and sort of unreal. There's forests, volcanoes, and while we were there, one night my wife and I, we left the kids in the room, we snuck out onto the beach, and when we were sitting there, we saw this amazing fireball in the sky that was gigantic. It was bigger than the moon. It went from horizon to horizon. And this little iPhone video didn't do it justice, but we just stood there in awe. And there were people around that were, thought it was the end of the world, and it was pretty amazing. But for me, this is what I thought of. It made me think of this picture in the Book of Miracles. So if you don't know the Book of Miracles is this illuminated manuscript depicting the wonders of the 16th century world, seen from the perspective of a monk who lived in the imperial free city of Augsburg in the Holy Roman Empire. And what makes this book extraordinary is its depictions of spectacular natural phenomena. So there was a comet, there was a rainbow, there's hail, there were a plague of locusts. And if you try to imagine the world of the 1500s, where knowledge was sort of secret, and writing it represented this sort of secret knowledge, and you can get yourself into the mindset, I think you can understand a little bit about what the world's like for kids when they're experiencing new things. So one of the most powerful tools that humans have is the ability to detect change. Kids notice when routines break. When they see a rainbow for the first time, it's amazing. I mean, it is as amazing as, as for us seeing a giant fireball in the sky. And I think getting yourself into that mindset is really important. It's something that we try to do at Tinybop. And it doesn't have to be some gigantic thing. I mean, I think about, when my kid was 8, I gave him his first erasable pen. And he spontaneously hugged me. And he said, I've been waiting for this my entire life. It was just like, he just thought it was the most amazing thing. To this day, he loves erasable pens. So I think the desire to collect knowledge and to tell stories is like the oldest human instinct. My father used to say that we're defined and separated from the beast by the stories we tell, and that we're the sum total of our stories. And I imagine that many of the earliest stories were told about the world as the people in those worlds experience them. They might have recounted the story of a hunt or a storm, and eventually, they talked about heroes and gods, and archaeologists say it took tens of thousands of years before words were combined with images. But you can imagine how powerful it was once that got started. Imagine being like in that cave, with the flickering light and seeing those animals And I imagine the flickering lights kind of made the animals look like they were moving. And they were using their medium. It's kind of like us using an accelerometer. Like, they were making it come to life. Storytellers learn how to use their medium. And of course, you can trace that desire to catalog the world and represent natural phenomena throughout history, from the Romans, to modern times. These are all just sort of these attempts to explain the world. And depicting science and depicting the world is tricky, because we're always learning new things, and sometimes we make mistakes. And with children, when we're depicting the world, if we make a mistake, if we simplify things too much, we can create misinformation. So in 1774, 5 years before he was stabbed to death by like a bunch of angry Hawaiians, James Cook discovered a place called, he named Sandy Island. It's in New Caledonia, it's out in the middle of the ocean, and it existed on maps for 200 years. Sailors reported passing it. It was written about. There was even a song sung about it. The island eventually showed up on Google Maps. The problem was that this island never existed. James Cook wrote about this island, but it's not there. The ocean there is 4,000 feet deep. And the mistake got copied and cataloged for 2 centuries. And the Google map picture was actually a composite. There was somebody at Google that thought, well, there must be an island there, so let's make a composite from other islands. So this is a huge danger when we're trying to illustrate science for kids. It's easy to make phantom islands. And with children's apps, it's especially dangerous, as kids often take things literally. And of course, the opposite's true when we're trying to tell stories. When we're telling stories, we want to create phantom islands. We want to create things that don't exist. And when technology turns fiction into reality, we create suspension of disbelief. It's entertainment storytelling. These are our sort of phantom islands. So, when my kids were little, I used to tell them all sorts of lies. So I would tell them that trees would talk to each other, and that there were tiny bears. And like on some level, they believe these stories. And so what we're doing is powerful, and we have to sort of respect what we're putting in kids' minds. And somewhere, like in my kids' heads, all those things that I told them are things that they believe. And that's a danger if you're trying to teach. What's the boundary between fact and fiction? Especially now that the boundaries between the real and the virtual are fading. And when a kid is in one of these sort of virtual worlds, it feels really real. So you have a tremendous responsibility about what you're representing in that world. We think at Tinybop that we're sort of building our own little book of miracles. The earliest known children's books, both in the East and the West, were texts on natural sciences. These were often written to educate the children of elites or, children of emperors. One of the earliest surviving non-royal, non-monasterial children's texts is something called the Treatise on the Astrolabe. It was written by Chaucer for his son Lewis. The astrolabe is this medieval instrument that helped predict the positions of the moon and the planets. And it's a science app, basically. He was teaching him how to use this thing. And Chaucer's son Lewis was dying when he wrote this. In fact, the manuscript was never finished, probably because Lewis died while he was writing it. And I sort of, the poetic part of me wants to think that he was writing this because he wanted to sort of give his son something as he passed on, because he knew that his son was going to die. This sort of need to catalog the world and to sort of explain the world is something that throughout history we've given as media, first to adults and then later to kids. One of the the first sort of modern media that was used in families were these stereographs. And they were sort of ways that sort of upper middle class families throughout the West would experience the world and travel around the world. We also have these sort of science charts. Again, it's a sort of taxonomy of the world that we would show to kids to try to explain the world. There were books about all sorts of esoteric subjects. Kids do this naturally. My kids used to make these little books cataloging things in their imagination. So this was a book of babies. So there were scary babies, and bee babies, and monster babies, all the different kinds of babies they imagined. Of course, this goes on and on. So I look at what we do at Tinybop as very similar to this. We're sort of the modern viewmaster for the natural world. When I was a kid, this was the series that I loved, that I spent a lot of time in the library reading and sort of escaping my small rural East Texas town from. So I suppose at some point I should talk about the apps. These are the apps that we currently have. We built in series. Our first series, The Explorer's Library, is our sort of natural world book of miracles. Each one is a little working model of some natural process. They're informed by all those school instructional posters and those books and classroom models. And the goal of that series is not so much to answer questions, but to spark them. Each one is a model of scientific phenomena, and each one is a simulation that allows children to sort of free play and explore. They're all about revealing the invisible, exposing systems, making connections, and opening kids up to new ideas. The general formula for the series is that there's a simulation, there's learning embedded in the simulation, the output, we hope, is the set of questions that the kid asks. Our second series, Digital Toys, they're construction sets that allow kids to give form to their imaginations, and each one is essentially a set of parts. It's a set of parts that allows them to build things, whether it be robots or programming or an arcade. The most recent one we launched is called Beam, and I'll talk about that in a bit. So the formula here is that we have a construction set, we have a set of parts, we put them together in a context, or the kid puts them together in sort of however they want. We give them a context, and the output is the story that the kid tells about the thing. It's not so much the actual thing that he's built, it's the story that they tell about it. So these are some things we think about. Everything can be real when play is serious. So if you've ever watched kids play, or if you've ever played with kids, you know that play is really serious for them. It's not. It's something that is as real as everything else in the world, and they have big emotional realities. And in the games that we play and in the sort of media that we give them, we have to respect their feelings and emotions. And I think it's easy for us as adults to forget how big and mysterious the world can be for kids. This was sort of the inspiration for our robot app. It's, my
robot on.
My kid.
What is your name?
Flying robot.
Robot, what is your weapon? Can I see the laser? What kind of robot are you?
I am
Arbot, why are you smiling? Did I tell you to smile? Arbot. I need to see angry faces from Arbot and Gbot. Why does Arbot not have his special hat on? Hello, robots. What do you have today?
Great. We don't have hands, we have wings, they need to fly.
You notice he shut the button off. Yeah. To me, you know, that's sort of a great example of kids playing with this stuff. But in the digital world, the same thing happens. This is a kid in our office after playing with our Robot Factory app for a little while.
One of my robots is like a stomach. It was like a fireplace kind of, and then when I seen the fireplace, I thought to myself like, oh, you could cook something in here. So I thought, oh, this one is for cooking at home, and it's like kind of like a butler and like a maid at the same time. How can I help you? In his world, all the robots, they drink solids. If he drinks like a liquid, and it'll just like throw up.
So again, we gave them a context, and the context shaped the play. The beginnings of our new Me app came with this. So my then third grader came home with a map of the heart. This is a project that they do in a lot of schools, and he was mapping out sort of the things that are important to him. I was very happy because I had a big square in there. But we tried this exercise in the office, and that we found that initially when we were playing it with kids in the office, many would just divide their heart into 2 or 3 squares. And it'd be like mom, dad, like candy. And what we realized was that we didn't have a master teacher. So we talked with the teacher, and we asked her about how she was getting all this detail from the kids, and she just gave them a bit of context. She asked them specific questions. And that is really important. You have to give kids context to sort of understand what they're going to do. Sometimes it just takes that little bit of push. The result of this for us was this app. And originally, when we were starting the app, we were posing a set of questions to kids. You know, what's your favorite color? Who are your parents? How do they make you feel? But eventually we found that kids' engagement skyrocketed if we flipped it a bit, and the prompts were in the first person. So we started rather than saying what's your favorite color, we said my favorite color is. My mother makes me feel. This is something I wish my parents knew about me. And we've been testing this around the world in classrooms all over the place, and educators are really over the moon about this app. They call it an SEL app. That's the term of art. But for me, the thing that's really important is the things that we learn about our kids. Even I was surprised when my 4th grader was playing this app. There's one question about, tell us something about something that happened in class. And he started typing the story about his teacher, Guadalupe, and a bunch of kids started chanting "Build a Wall" to her. And this brought up this whole discussion with my son about how he was scared that if the election went sort of in the way in the Trump direction, that he was scared that I and my dad would be taken away to Mexico because we were both born in Mexico. That's a conversation I wouldn't have had, and I have a pretty, talky relationship with my kids. It's a conversation I wouldn't have had without the app. We just gave them that bit of context. So to me, that's the power of giving kids context, is that it can start conversation. I think everybody here knows that play is learning. This slide is really for other people that don't get that. And one of the last things I wanted to say is that 9-year-olds are still 9-year-olds, 8-year-olds are still 8-year-olds. When we arrived here yesterday, Warren actually met my kids, and they were excitedly creating an Instagram account that was a special meme account, and within one day they picked up 600 followers. And their stated goal was to sell merch. It's like pretty sophisticated stuff, right? And kids are technologically sophisticated. You look at groups of 8-year-olds that are playing Minecraft and think they're like so beyond where we are. But remember, most of these kids still sleep with teddy bears. And there's still a lot that they don't know about the world. And kids, despite their sort of entrepreneurial ambitions on Instagram, their favorite thing to do on Instagram is to post origami. And sometimes they get frustrated to tears that they can't make the right thing. So the sophisticated technologist and the kid, they live side by side. I always put this in talks. I always think it's important for us to put ourselves in our proper place. There are many brands that put themselves at the center, and they put their narratives at the center. I think it's really important to put the kids' narratives in the center. Does your content spark ideas? Does it give them space to do that? Can they tell their own stories? For us, we try to put kids in the center, and the brand is very much on the side. Our job as parents, as people in kids' lives, is to prepare kids for the world they'll inherit. This is my classroom. I'm the kid there in the blue. Very little of what I do today in my day-to-day life were things I learned in class. My parents' greatest gift to me was that they gave me time and space to tinker. They gave me unlimited access to my local library, which allowed me to hang out and read encyclopedias cover to cover. My sixth grader's classroom, is pretty similar. I try to give him space to tinker as well. And our apps are not an attempt to teach kids a list of facts, but rather an attempt to get kids excited about science so that they'll delve deeper on their own. It's an attempt to provide some basic scientific literacy and give them the building blocks to do jobs and be good citizens of the world. There are many parents who feel threatened by screen time, feel threatened by technology. They feel that there's not enough time running around on summer nights, or making sandcastles, or blowing bubbles. And I totally agree. There's almost never enough time for those things. And as parents, but the parents that rail against screen time never get upset when kids read or build. And I see exploring on screens as just another place to play and explore. And the kids are following our modeling. We're the ones that are on screens. And it's up to us to create content that's worthy of their time and attention. So let's play. Usually at the end of my talks, I have a few bloopers. So these are in our human body app. We were updating it recently and managed to screw up the heart. Our plants app, we discovered a little set of tiny creatures roaming around the forest. Our skyscrapers app, our first attempt at the earthquake was a little intense. And our avatar app, we were doing an animal avatar at the same time, and there were some bad results. And I think this was from Infinite Arcade. One of the programmers set this up, this little cat pushing this eyeball, it's supposed to fall off, and he doesn't. But anyway, so those are my bloopers. Say hi if you need to, I'll be around today. Thanks.